Here's something that might seem obviously true. Pain itself is bad. Bad in the sense that we have a reason to avoid it. It's important to be clear on what the claim is. The claim is that pain is itself or intrinsically bad. It is not the claim that pain never leads to things that are good, or that pain in life is never worth accepting. Rather, it's the claim that pain is never worth accepting for its own sake. Suppose someone explains that the fear they felt in a dangerous environment helped them avoid some evil that would have foreclosed many future goods for them. But they say this fear was unpleasant. It was pain for them. So they say pain is good. But this would show only that pain can at times be instrumentally good, lead to good, or have good effects. It would not show that the pain was intrinsically good. And notice if there were some non painful mechanism that just as effectively warned individuals of danger, most would likely prefer that over fear. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, the distinction between intrinsic and instrumental value. Another thing that's sometimes said is this: any claim we make about pain is subjective because pain is a subjective phenomenon. That is, it's a mental, subjective state. This, however, makes use of two senses of the word subjective. The first is about claims. The second has to do with the way in which a thing exists. Pains are subjective in the sense that they exist only in minds. They occur only in subjects of experience. That doesn't mean, however, that claims about these mental states cannot be objectively true. For example, that I experience pain whenever I stub my toe is an objectively true statement about my experience, which is subjective in the existence sense. And so, from the fact that pain is subjective in the existence sense, it does not follow that claims about pain, like that pain is bad, are subjective or just a matter of opinion. But perhaps what some have in mind when they say that pain is subjective is something else, namely something like this: what causes pain in one individual may not cause pain in another individual. For instance, suppose A derives satisfaction from listening to country music. B, by contrast, dislikes country music and experiences pain, broadly defined, when listening to country music. Therefore, the argument goes, pain is not objectively bad. Note, however, that the claim is not that everyone, or even the same individual over time, will experience pain from the same set of things or the same set of sensations. That's not the claim. The claim is that when something causes pain in someone, that state is something worth avoiding. So there's nothing in the claim that says that particular activities, like listening to country music, or particular sensations, that these things are intrinsically bad. The claim is rather that pain, a state of consciousness that feels bad, or disliked state of consciousness, something like that, is intrinsically bad. And therefore, it's no objection to the claim about pain's badness that certain activities or sensations do not universally cause pain. Still, some might think, why not regard pain as something we are simply programmed to avoid, a sort of instinct instilled in us through evolution? Why think that there's any reason to avoid pain? That is, why think that it's bad? Well, I would say because it seems like much more than just an instinct or inclination. Suppose, for example, we evolved a strong inclination to turn away from green objects. Whenever a green object is shown to us, we feel an urge to turn away, even though staring directly at these objects causes no pain or uneasiness of any kind. Question is, would we continue to regard the sight of green objects as intrinsically bad just because we had this inclination? In other words, would we continue thinking that there's a reason to avoid the sight of green objects for its own sake? I don't think that we would. It's not just that we instinctually avoid pain, we apprehend its badness. That is, we think there really is something about pain that counts against experiencing it. And I don't think there's any complex reasoning involved here. We simply reflect on what pain is like and most immediately see that there's a reason to avoid it. It may also be helpful to consider a consequence of denying the badness of pain. Presumably, if there's no reason to avoid pain for its own sake, there's no reason to avoid being in agony forever for its own sake. Now, of course, we might have a strong inclination to avoid agony, but that's all it is, an inclination. There's no reason to try to avoid agony for its own sake. But that just seems wildly implausible. Now, I suppose a possible response from someone is this: I would choose to avoid agony, but that's because I personally want to avoid agony, and my wanting to avoid agony gives me a reason to avoid it. But notice this just reintroduces badness at a different level. What's bad on this view, in the sense that we have a reason to avoid it, is the non-fulfillment of wants or preferences. And so if the point of denying the badness of pain, the motivation for that, was to avoid values or reasons of the sort we've been considering, as I think it very often is, this doesn't seem to be the way to do that. Second, since basically everyone wants to avoid pain, practically speaking, I think not a whole lot changes by adopting this view. But again, my view, and I take it the common sense view of pain, is that it's bad. We have a reason to avoid it for its own sake. And I don't see much reason to doubt, much less abandon, the common sense view.